Hello and welcome to... Oh, I'm well out of focus. Jesus Christ. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series, our twice-weekly show, typically on a Tuesday and a Friday at 5 p.m. UK time, although this is the second of the week because yesterday evening at 9 p.m. UK time, I was joined by Sophie from the Highbury squad and we had a very good debate about Arsenal and Arteta and where we are and where we might be going. And we don't agree. And it was a really good debate if you haven't already checked it out. So please make sure you go and do that straight after listening to us, of course. And I say us because I'm joined by a mediocrity guest. He's shaking his head, but it's Drew. How you doing, mate? Are you well?
You can't help yourself. Yeah, I'm good. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good. I will stop bullying you one day. It's you're considering.
You only do it because there's an ocean between us. Because I'll pummel you into the ground when I see you at your wedding. So
true. Yes. Drew has an invite. Someone in the chat box the other week suggested that the next tier of membership should be an invite to the wedding. So are people really that keen to come? I mean, I'm pretty sure people have said is there going to be streams at the wedding. I'm pretty sure with Mike there'll be so many videos. It's
not even going to be. It's going to be uncontrollable. Mike's going to be like just a man on a mission. He's trying to embarrass us all on an hourly basis. Yeah. So
Georgia is genuinely absolutely
concerned.
She's concerned. And I did speak to Mike about this. I said, I should let you know that G is a little concerned. And he was like, oh, you know what I'm like. I wouldn't do that. And I'm like, I know what you're like, Mike. I do know what you're like. I've been to pubs with you, mate. We've had a drink together quite a few times. And it ended up with a picture of me in bed, which everyone has seen now on social media. He scrolls through my Facebook and takes pictures of me when I was like 19 at uni to then put in picture frames to put behind him on podcasts. Like, he knows no bounds, this man. He knows no bounds at all. So, yes, we'll cross that bridge next year when we come to it. But obviously we're here to talk about Arsenal's striking situation, which we'll do in just a second. Before we do, though, if you haven't already, what are you laughing at? What's so funny?
the chat box. Like, sometimes when people take the piss, it's actually really funny. So
fair enough. Is that Dave going, surely ambassador level gets in?
No. It's after that. Someone saying I have like a nice temple look because of mine.
Is Dominic Szoboszlai invited to the? Of course he is. Of course he's the reverend, he's the ordained guy. I don't know what they're called. What are they called? Ministers? Is that it? Is that the word? I think minister or registrar? Registrar, maybe. I don't know. I'm not organising anything. My job's done. I've asked the question. That's all I need to do. That's this is all on her now. It's her thing. She sorts it out. I just got to turn up, say the right words, and have a few drinks. That's my job.
And make sure you feed Mike the appropriate amount of beef Wellington, which has already been doing the rounds.
Yeah, not on the list.
He's that's a run.
Yeah, but I'm not going to tell him what is on the list of the menu, to be fair. Anyway, if you haven't already got a ticket for this week's prize, this is the second time around. This prize is coming up specifically a signed Patrick Vieira shirt with certificate of authentication always. Last week, I was a bit annoyed because the Highbury squads, who are the other Arsenal sponsor, one of their listeners, one of those guys, those ones, they won it. And I was a bit like, oh, great. Yeah, they won a Kieran Tierney shirt, I think it was, last week. So I'm not okay with this. I need you guys to step up. We need to win this. We need to get the run back going. We've had Jared and Dan have both won prizes. We need more people winning prizes. So come on, go buy a ticket. Link is in the description for the Football Prizes website, and you'll be able to find the prize on there. The draw will be on Friday at 8:30 on their Facebook page, UK time, and of course on Fridays, Let's Talk Arsenal show at 5 p.m. I'll be revealing which one of our expert members or TGT ambassadors have won the free entry into the competition. Anyway, today's show is all about... I've just seen another good one. Tactical breakdowns. I was ready. Yes. Anyway, as I said, this show today is about Arsenal's striker situation because we've got quite a few strikers. But the start of next season, we might have considerably less, or we might have considerably different strikers by that point. And we've got quite a few to talk through and talk about and discuss where we see them in the next few years or the next year or whatever. So we're going to run through them. As we do go through them and me and Drew have this discussion, of course, in the chat box, get your thoughts and comments and questions specifically about them through, and we'll try and answer them as we go. So to kick it off, the uncomplicated example of Folarin Balogun, Drew, which is a player that obviously we've never seen play in the Premier League and yet is going to be, arguably, if you do read on Twitter how good this guy is, the next Lionel Messi. So what do you make of Balogun, and what do you make of the whole situation with him that's gone on this season?
I mean, it's weird. Like, you always want to keep you hope that your better academy products come through and stay with the club for some period of time. But I'm not really fussed with it. I just kind of feel like, your history isn't defined by ifs and maybes. And yes, Balogun may go on and have a fantastic career at club or maybe even international level, but we don't know that, so we can't hinge all our bets on him being the next best thing. People made the same mistake with Reece Nelson, and then look how that turned out. So you just don't know. And I kind of feel like I'd be more worried about it if we didn't just extend Oba. And even though I didn't want Oba to be extended, at the very least, you could say we still have X many years with Oba left before we have to really, really concern ourselves with, someone who's coming through. And then also look at the fact that, you still have Muller in the academy as well, and he's come on quite well with rave reviews. You have a lot of people who postulate that Martinelli could be transitioned into center forward. We really don't know if that's going to happen or not. But I just don't feel like to sort of nail your signpost on this mast about this is the hill you want to die on. It's a very weird one for me, and I feel like we've lost good players before who are very good at academy level, and they've gone on and not done very much. We've also lost players who have gone on and done quite a bit. So, but that's the nature of the academy. For me, I feel like it's a good player maybe at the wrong time. You know what I mean? Like, and that's kind of where you get into deeper discussions about pathways for youth players, for academy products. Like, do we really need both Aubameyang and Lacazette if Balogun is in the system? And all these kind of questions come up. And yeah, those questions have merit, but I just don't think that it's that big of a deal for me. I think it's different. If he came on and he started getting minutes with the first team, and you saw that over the course of hundreds of minutes, not dozens of minutes, that he had something in his locker moving forward, for sure, that will definitely translate to first team level. Then you might be a little bit more frustrated by it, right? But for me, I just kind of feel like, yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it, but I'm not. You know what I mean? Like, it sucks losing a good academy product, but at the end of the day, you lose good academy products all the time. And in another world, in another universe or whatever, maybe he comes through and has a different career if we didn't already have a good amount of strikers ahead of him at the current moment. And that's just part and parcel of it for me.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you. And I think that when you look at for me, what you look at is that you look at a player that's never had a minute of Premier League football, and people will turn around and say, well, he's not been given the opportunity. But there's still always part of me that's going to go, if someone genuinely is rated highly enough, they would still be put into the team and they would still be given opportunities over the likes of Nketiah. And he hasn't been. I mean, Emile Smith-Rowe has pushed his way in, Saka pushed his way in, and Balogun's not necessarily been able to do that. A lot of people would say that they've looked at the performances that he did when he came in against Mulder and he scored on his debut, and he came in against, I think it was Dundalk, and he scored against Dundalk as well. And he took those two chances, and you would say, fair play, you've taken those two chances. But it's a very difficult and delicate situation when you're dealing with a contract negotiation, because you can't allow the player to dictate those negotiations. You can't allow yourselves as the club to lose control. It's also very difficult because he has the same agent as one of the other players we're going to talk about, Eddie Nketiah, which makes it basically you can't mug off the agent, you can't deceive the agent, because whatever impacts one impacts the other. So it's really difficult to try and avoid talking about one without the other coming into it. Which is
it's also the same group that Sancho is in as well. I'm pretty sure the same agency.
Yes, and Saka
and
Nelson.
Exactly. So if things are intertwined, and that kind of maybe points you in a certain direction where Sancho wasn't prepared to wait for his chance at City, and maybe this is one of the reasons. But Foden was, and just things happen how they do. So yeah, it's just a matter of you kind of cut your losses and you put faith in the academy to produce you another one, and that's kind of and the cycle continues. So.
Yeah, I feel like that we could talk about Balogun for a long time. We're not going to linger on it for too long, but I do want to get your thoughts in the chat box. Daniel Roberts says, I think Moller must be highly rated by Boulder Metazaka as he was given the captaincy the other day by the under-23s. I have heard from all best purposes that he has done very, very well in the youth team. You don't want to end up hyping the kid up too much and expect him to get starts, but I'd like to see him maybe get a loan next season, maybe a 6-month loan to a lower division or maybe abroad somewhere. I think it's important that you send these kids out as soon as possible. I mean, the likes of Joe Willock never got a loan. Reece Nelson got a loan and it was very mixed, and it can tell you a lot about player. And Tyrese John Jules is obviously on loan this season, which is another striker at the club. But I mean, briefly on that, do you think John Jules has any kind of future at the club, or is he just going to be one of those that, similar to other strikers like Akpom, I suppose, that just never really came to the fore and will eventually move on?
I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like, to his credit, I feel like Arteta will at least get a good look at the players. And he himself has said he's been monitoring players that are on loan, whether he wasn't speaking about John Jules specifically, but he will at least be made aware of his progress for sure. You can rest assured with that. So I think a lot of it also will depend on what we currently have. I feel like, we don't know what will happen. Maybe Lacazette sees out his last year instead of leaving in the summer, that kind of thing. So there might not be a pathway for him just yet. It also depends on the player. I just kind of feel like, again, you can have good academy products, but because as the financials have already come out, it might be a struggle for the next year or two, depending on if we don't get Europe next season, the purse strings are going to be a little bit tight. We're going to have to recoup funds if we're going to want to improve on the squad. So this is one of those moments where you might have to rely on your ability to produce good players and use it as a vein to get cash from. And I'm okay with that, So again, I think in another world, he could have a future, but again, timing needs must be met for the first team kind of thing. So again, I think he'll end up being a solid player. I don't think he's going to end up at that level of, we regret, like Gnabry as an example. But I do feel like Nketiah, I think he'll go on to have a really good career in the championship or for maybe like a second tier Premier League club perhaps. But I don't know if he's going to be, again, I'm not hinging my bets on him being like a big thing for the club. And again, that's okay.
John Jules has a famous uncle, apparently, says Daniel Robert, which I've known nothing about. But Dave Lennon says, what is interesting about Balogun is that Arteta keeps talking up the percentage of keeping him. And he does keep doing that. And I find that a bit odd. Like he keeps saying, like, we're confident of him staying. He wants to stay and all of this. And if he does end up going, there will be questions. There will be a lot of questions. If I was in Arteta's shoes, I'd be like, look, we're just doing as much as we can to try and keep him, and we'll let you know if there's any news. Like, I wouldn't be like, we're very confident he's going to stay. He wants to stay, blah, 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 blah. It's a weird one. It really is. Anyway, moving on to the next. We are, obviously, I can see something in the chat box of throwing up possible names of who we might be signing or who you'd like to see us sign. We are going to be talking about that in the second half of the show. So bear with us. Hold fire on your suggestions as we go through some of these. So the next one is obviously one we talked about, Eddie Nketiah. Year left on his deal at the end of the season, and I would like to see him sold. I've said that before. I've said it several times, and Mike has told me time and time again, no, this kid's going to make it. But yeah, I've never been really on that train. So where do you sit on Nketiah?
I feel like, yeah, I have to say how I feel, even though you already know how I feel. And again, at the risk of not sounding like an echo chamber, I just feel like if he was going to make it at this club, he would have done a better job of working himself into more playing time. When he's been clearly in the first team at this point, he's not done it. At a period where Aubameyang had a very down period this season, Lacazette has been hot and cold for the majority of his time at Arsenal, for better or worse, and for whatever reason you want to subscribe to it. He's not done enough. And again, I think for me, if you're talking about keeping players that haven't done enough to force the question, then you should be fine with letting them go. And it's unfortunate that we have to let him go with a year left, which means you're not going to get as much in return. But I think you should let him go. Again, I think when you have someone like Muller waiting in the wings, and even if we somehow convince Balogun to stay, you have two other young center forwards that can immediately slot into his role in the first team potentially, or at least take some of those minutes from Europa League, League Cup, maybe some FA Cup early round, and you keep it moving. So yeah, I'm fine with him going, and I think he's one of those players. He will go on and have a good career somewhere. He's not. For me, he won't be and hasn't ever been a player who I can envision leading the line at Arsenal to getting back into top four. I don't think he's that good. I think people talk about his goal return for England under 21s, how well he did, through the youth system. That's great. But again, it's something I keep talking about. Young players can be exceptionally good at youth level. It does not mean they're going to be good as full professionals.
Is Nketiah ever going to be a 30-goal a season striker in the Premier League?
No, never in a million years. I would be dumbfounded,
shocked.
Yeah, to say the least. And again, there are late bloomers as well. Like no one thought Jamie Vardy was going to be where Jamie Vardy is currently.
But he hasn't got any of that. Like when you look at the players that make it, Vardy, like his knowledge of where to be the right place. He's rapid. Yeah. He knows where to be. Eddie Nketiah is not rapid. He's not slow, but he's not rapid. And then the other end of the scale is a striker that's physical and that's got the ability to hold players off and hold the ball up. Eddie Nketiah has neither rapid pace, or physicality. He is a fox in the box and he's a poacher and he can get on the end of chances. He can't create really chances for himself regular enough to warrant being an Arsenal striker.
And I agree. And we bemoan how many chances Oba and Laka have missed this season, and Nketiah has missed some countless times. He's missed absolute sitters. And even if he's young, even when you're young, it doesn't really matter. You could be young, you could be 29. If your trade and your bread and butter is I should be putting chances away and you can't put them away with any measure of consistency, then that's it. What's done is done, and you kind of move on. So yeah, no, I think he'll go on and he'll be just fine. But I don't think it should be with us. I think we need to again. He has to be one of those players you have to recoup funds for. We have some work to do with the first team, in the summer and the summer after that, obviously. And then because of the way the finances look, you have to take with what you can get.
Owen says, heard Canton was lethal at youth level until his knees changed direction a few times. This is true. That is not true at all. I was terrible. I did play striker for the majority of my Sunday league career, but never. I won top scorer mainly because no one else in the team could score. That was pretty much it. So I was like, I was like I was going to say Patrick Bamford, but actually Leeds have quite a few players who can score. So that's a really poor example. Who's a good example of a team where they're just like, they heavily rely on their striker for goals? I'm trying to think. Fulham, when they came up, just had Mitrovic scoring. That was about it. I'm trying to think of someone else. Callum Wilson at Newcastle maybe is a good example.
That's a very good example.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was, and Newcastle's quite a good example as well. Danny Ings, Robert. I think that's harsh on Southampton, to be fair, but yeah, Enrico, Callum Wilson. Kane is not Patrick. We love if it was only Kane that scored for them. Unfortunately, it's not true. Anyway, Balogun and Nketiah, we're stepping up the ladder. We're moving up, and the next player, of course, is Alexandre Lacazette. Again, another player of 1 year left on his contract. I'm again. Same as Eddie, bid comes in. I don't care if the bid's 15 million quid, mate. I'm taking that for Lacazette.
For this one, I could see the rationale in both. I could see him just winding down the year if we feel like there's not a center forward on the market that makes sense for us to go for. Also, if we feel like, say, someone's development like Muller is ahead of schedule, if you just let Lacazette run his year down, and then he walks on a free and goes to wherever, and then Muller just slots straight in. That also makes sense for the club, right? So we don't know if the club's looking for the long-term center forward option internally, or if we really do want to go out and spend. Just because we're linked with players doesn't mean we're actually linked with players, especially because now you could argue that the rumor is that a lot of the leaks from the club are gone, so we don't know what we're actually doing. So I take everything in the media with a grain of salt. We don't really have a clue anymore, so I just kind of feel like I can see the merit in it, but I could also understand that. Look at this, so you have Moussa Dembele is leaving Lyon at the end of the summer. At this summer, Lyon need a center forward. Olas loves Lacazette. The fan base still loves him. If him going back to Lyon to finish his career would make a lot of sense for him, and it would make a lot of sense for us to recoup that kind of money. I don't think it's going to be some
touted as well.
Monaco. I don't think it's going to be some part of package deal to get Aouar. So please, let's not even go down that route.
That ship has sailed, unfortunately.
Yeah, it has. I just kind of feel like, again, I could see the merits in both. So I'd be fine with him leaving, but I'd also be fine with him staying. I think he still would have a role to play in a long season. But the caveat is, if we don't get Europe, we're going to have minimal rotation at center forward. Then even more so, I'd be fine with him leaving. There'd be no reason to have Oba and Lacazette at the club if we're not competing in Europe and we don't have to rotate. Oba again, has proven himself.
Arguably, don't even have to sign someone if that's
we don't exactly that, because Oba has proved himself, thankfully, over the course of his career to be one of the fittest players in football. Period. He's never had a serious injury at any point in his career. So the only rotation you'd be doing without Europe would be the League Cup. You argue that he would play the majority of the FA Cup fixtures as well. So there'd be no point in it. So then I'd be fine with Lacazette leaving and then having maybe like a younger player to deputize or whatever it might be. But I think you're right. Martinelli, maybe, you don't really know. But again, I'd be fine with both. I'm not hinging another way.
I actually, that's not something I've not really thought about. If we do not qualify for Europe and we have just got to focus on the Premier League, I think you can look at other areas of the pitch to look at if you end up selling Lacazette, because you give then a year to either Martinelli to have more opportunities, or you have a year for Moller to have another year of development or be on loan. You've got Tyrese John Jules coming back to be assessed, and Nketiah, I expect him to go, but if he is still here for the last year of his contract, then you've got him to deputise if you really need it. So I think that, if we end up not qualifying for Europe next season, it doesn't make too much sense to go all out on a striker when you've got to pay the wages that we got to pay to Aubameyang, and then also you give yourself another year. Like I've done these articles on like strikers that we'd sign, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's not exactly like Europe's not bursting with brilliant strikers to go and sign at certain levels at the moment. There are opportunities, but it's still pretty bare right now. And so in a year's time, there might be other options that come to the fore. Anyway, we mentioned Aubameyang, so let's talk about him. So you think he can play on the left? Yeah, is that what is that? Drew loves Aubameyang on the left. People, he loves it.
No, I mean, again, you and I had this talk on the side. What was it, yesterday? That you could theorize that if you go out and buy a center forward this summer, then you just move Aubameyang to the left again. But then you're taking away chances from someone like Pepe to really nail down a first team place, because his clear stock is better on the right. You still have Martinelli's development to worry about. You have all these other players who can and should be playing on the left. So why would you move Aubameyang there when it's clear that he's probably best as a center forward, especially since we've brought in a number 10, either it be Smith Rowe being available or Odegaard coming back in or coming in on loan. Oba's looked on average better than he had beforehand. Having that key creative player directly behind him is a big deal. And that's something I mentioned during his time at Dortmund, even though they didn't always use a strict out and out 10. A lot of times they played a 4-3-3. They still had someone like a Shinji Kagawa or a Mario Götze in that creative role behind him, and it paid dividends from him in a big way. And then Mkhitaryan came in as well. So that's a big deal. So I kind of just feel like it's best to use your best vein for goals in his best role in the system that increasingly looks like it's going to create chances, because all the data is out there that post-Christmas we've created more chances since Christmas, since we've looked better. Our XG is higher and we're creating more chances. So inevitably those chances are going to fall for Aubameyang. So you may as well just use him where he's best and let that be that, and then you move forward with that. And because we just extended him, 2 or 3 seasons, it doesn't make sense to extend him and then not give him the correct platform to prove that he's worth the pay bump that he just received. So play him to the middle. If you need to rotate one time, if when players aren't fit and injuries crop up, he can. If you need him on the left because you want to bring on someone that's in the forward because you're trying to rotate another position, that's fine. I get it, but I think the lion's share of his appearances moving forward need to be as center forward. That's just it for me. Like I get the other argument, but
obviously we've talked about the other strikers in the context of selling them. Just to raise that point, Javier says Alba would still bring in 30 to 40 million in transfer money, mate. You've got a striker that's 31 plus now, that's on ridiculous wages in a pandemic hit market. No one categorically no one is spending 30 to 40 million on Aubameyang. No one is doing
that. And the thing is that the clubs that would spend money on him are clubs that don't need a center forward. They're clubs that already have a center forward, or they're clubs that want Erling Haaland. So
yes, and why would you sign Aubameyang at that age, at that price? It would make
zero. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense to do that. Yonik says that's why Depay on a free makes sense. When Alba's fit, he can play on the left, and Alba out and out can play down the middle. Can also play in a number 10 if Arteta decides to play with. Who can play as a number 10? Depay. Oh wow, no, I wouldn't be playing. I mean, if you've watched Lyon, Depay at 10 is not where he's been effective, and never where he's been effective, Depay. So I wouldn't be looking at that at all. PSV, he wasn't playing at 10, was he? So
no, he wasn't.
No, he was more on the wing. Was he not at PSV?
He was strictly on the wing at PSV.
Yeah. So I think that Arteta obviously likes to have a striker that can drop in, that can hold the ball up well, bring the wide players into play. But I think he also recognises that at the moment, that's not really something that we're going to be pushing for unless we bring someone else in. Lacazette, he brought on against Burnley in kind of that role just behind Aubameyang, and it made us worse. Like taking off at Erdegaard and then playing someone else in that hole didn't work. And unfortunately, that really kind of did hamper us a bit, and there was a lot of criticism for that. Depay. Actually, the thought of bringing in Depay itself, like, I'd be absolutely fine if Arsenal went out and signed Depay for free in the summer window. It makes complete sense to go and do that. The thing is that he will most likely end up at Barcelona this summer with Ronald Koeman, if he is still there. He wants to move to Barcelona. I get the idea around it. He doesn't want to sign a new deal from the looks of things. He's rejected the last 3 offers that Lyon have given him, maybe even more than 3. He does look like he's going to go this summer, but I think that Arsenal would be not very high up on a list, especially considering if we didn't have any European football for Depay, especially when Lyon look like they're going to qualify for the Champions League as well. I'm not sure that is going to be an option for Arsenal. That does bring us nicely onto that topic. Go on, you want to say something before we do?
I was just going to say, I think, man, I get so, and this isn't directed at anybody in the chat, but I get so triggered about transfer speculation talks because.
Well, you're going to enjoy the next section.
I'm already preparing myself, but I just kind of feel like the right way to analyze players about who the club should go for, you need to not look at it from a biased standpoint from our lens. You have to look at it from what the player is probably going to want. And I think that's something that fans aren't considering. Like, there are fans who seriously are out there who think that we should go and go get Erling Haaland and that he would want to come here over the host of other clubs that are going to be in for him. And you have to analyze and think that's just not going to be the case. Like, you have to really start looking at Arsenal in terms of what we can offer the kind of player you're talking about. So, by an example, a lot of people turn into like Ivan Toney as an example. And I think he, like Ollie Watkins before him, is proving that, the championship does have good players, particularly they have good forwards, right? So would it be an automatic upgrade for Toney to leave from Brentford to go to Arsenal? Yes, but Brentford are probably going to be in the Premier League next year. If Arsenal have no Europe.
I want him.
If Arsenal have no Europe, there's little else that we can say apart from we're just a bigger club, but that almost becomes irrelevant because would he be starting over Aubameyang? Probably not. So why would he leave being a leading line striker in the Premier League for a smaller club and being a bench striker at a bigger club but still not playing? So that's kind of like that, and that makes it very tricky, and that's why having Aubameyang at the club also makes it very tricky on how you negotiate the market in terms of the kind of players we realistically should be targeting and who would be fine with being secondary to a player who just got extended for 3 years. And who probably isn't going to start over him. So
the Toney situation, like, I think, and what I've learned is that when you do a little bit more research on players, which obviously from doing the striker articles that I have, you realise that your opinion changes. But I basically looked at a couple of games at his goal record and was like, oh yeah, Toney, like, he's a guy coming through at Brentford. You look at Ollie Watkins' transfer. Actually, when you do your research and you do track the player and you do look at the goals they've scored, the type of goals they've scored, where they've come from, you compare that of how it would work at Arsenal. Toney is not the right striker for Arsenal to go for. He's still exceptionally raw and he's already 24, I think. So it's not it's not the type of profile. And Brentford would want a price that I don't think would represent a good deal for Arsenal either. At like 30 million quid, I don't think it makes any sense.
It'll be the Grealish thing as well. Grealish could have easily left Villa when they just skirted relegation or when they were in the championship, but Villa were still within their rights to demand a fee that was quite higher than people would have wanted because of his importance to the side as well. Like that also has to be factored in. So we really have to actually get kind of creative in terms of where we can look, and it might have to come from a player who comes from a more relatively, not top 5 league, for example. You don't really know.
Patson Daka from Red Bull Salzburg, which is a profile of striker I like. I do like Patson Daka. I like his strike partner Sekou Keita, and I do like Berisha as well. All 3 of their forwards are likable strikers. Each of them, though, is a risk because if you sign someone from the Austrian Bundesliga, they can be as good as the likes of Konrad Laimer, etc. at RB Leipzig, or they can be as subdued as Takumi Minamino at Liverpool. So you don't know what's going to ultimately happen. And Daniel Robertson is Adeyemi as well, a young German striker at Salzburg as well. He's coming through. He's not yet for me at the level that I would want him moving away from Salzburg, but Daka is at the point he could move on. Keita is maybe a year away, and Berisha, I think, will also be snapped up by someone. So there is others. Patrick Carlson says Weghorst, as does Enrico. And I know James Rowe on Twitter is a big fan of Wout Weghorst, although he does have a very Dutch bias.
He has a very, it's like a huge bias. So
it's a huge bias. But I wouldn't mind the thought of him, but I know he'd cost a fair amount of money to get him because he's in his prime. I think on Transfer Market they rate him at like 30 million quid, and that they're usually underestimated in value. So
it would cost 35 million maybe. And the other issue people have to understand is that at the moment, if memory serves, Wolfsburg are in line for Champions League football next season. They're in 3rd in the Bundesliga. So again, would he miss out on chance on playing in Champions League to come down to a side not playing in Europe? And again, and this is something I try to preach to a lot of people, that Arsenal does not have the pull globally that people think. Arsenal has the pull on certain parts of the globe. But so when a lot of people name drop a lot of, I don't know, say like Laimer, for example. I know you love Laimer. I rate him quite highly, but it's not just Arsenal, it's the Premier League. How many Austrian players have played in the Premier League? I can tell you off the top of my head, it's about 13 players have played in the Premier League in the entire history of the Premier League since it began in the early 90s. There is no pull for Austrians to come here. There is a pull for Austrians to go to Germany and stay in Germany if they're at top level.
Language.
I think 85 to 90% of the Austrian national team play in the Bundesliga. The other 3 or 4 players play either in Austria, with 2 or 3 of them, and then 1 or 2 of them play in, I forget which other league it is.
Oh, Alnatovic is in China, I think.
That's one of them, yeah, and I forget the other. Somebody plays, I feel like someone plays in Spain or France. I can't remember.
Yeah, there is. I can't remember who it is. There's one more that plays. I'm gonna have to. You keep talking. I'm gonna.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So I feel like, and it's something that a lot of us postulated when Edu came in is if we need to start looking at the South American market. I feel for players that are obviously above a certain age because of the new rules. But when people talk about, for example, I know we're talking about strikers, but for example, people talk about midfielders we could bring in that would be affordable, that would want to jump to a club like Arsenal. People don't mention players like Patrick de Paula in Brazil. He's an excellent midfielder. I think he's 21 or 22 now. He'd be an upgrade on everybody at the club, bar Partey and probably Xhaka. But it's from a source that you could get a player like that for. If he was in Europe, he'd be twice the price already. But there has to be players elsewhere that we can look to that would not find a reason to turn Arsenal down. I feel like a lot of the players that fans talk about have a lot of reasons to turn Arsenal down, but maybe not other clubs. So it's hard for us to. I know you and I talk about this stuff all the time, and we sit here and we analyze, what players make sense. We were talking about Andre Silva, and I absolutely love Andre Silva as a striker. And if we didn't have Aubameyang, I would say break the bank for him because on form, he's been one of the top 3 or 4 center forwards in Europe this season because of how versatile he is. He is transformative. He's clinical. He's technically very good. But I think for me, it's 2 things. One, I just don't see him wanting to lead at the age he is now. Why would he want to play second fiddle to Aubameyang?
Yeah,
he's better as a center forward instead of a left winger. And does Aubameyang want to play on the left? Again, you go back to the question of you have to look at the other options we have at the club, players who should be playing on the left, and Oba isn't one of them, right? So, and also I feel like he fits Frankfurt's system more than he does Arsenal's at the moment. I feel like they've really tailored things around him and really come. He has two creative players behind him, or he's paired with Bastos as a center forward partnership. And he plays off them quite well, and it works quite well. I could see him at Wolves first before Arsenal, but for the obvious reasons. But yeah, I feel like we're in a tricky period as a club right now, sitting mid-table, might not be getting Europe, with a younger manager who is charismatic and can convince and has developed players, but there's just so many other clubs that have better pull. And something you said, I said, I know Jess is in the chat. She said it. Mike said it at TGT. A lot of us have said it. Like, we have to get a little bit more creative now. We're not in the position where we can say that our clout is enough to convince players to take a back seat and also, deal with the fact that they're not getting Europe. It's a tough pill to swallow. Some players would be fine with playing second fiddle to Oba if we still had Europe on offer, because then there's more chances to play and they're still in Europe. Bonuses come with that, all that kind of stuff. But if there's no Europe and they're backseat to a striker who doesn't need to be rotated out, it's a tricky sell, I feel like. So,
yeah. I've seen some other names. Got Boadu at RZ Alkmaar. I have watched now quite a lot of him.
Alkmaar has like 4 players I would take tomorrow.
Yeah, Koop Miners, Stengs, and Boadu. I think. Go on, you want to say something?
And Vindal, left back.
The left back, yeah. You say Vindal, I would have gone Vindal. Is that my Dutch is not great?
No, who knows which one it is, but yeah, it'd probably Vindal actually, because it's.
I'll ask James. James will know. He'll tell us. But
well, it's Wijnaldum, so it's Vindal. So there you go.
I wouldn't risk Boadu right now. I feel like he needs to develop more from what I've watched of him as well. The goals that he scored, some of them are really fortunate. The position that he gets into with some of the goals he scored. He's not. I think he scored 1 header in the last 2 years. Even though he's like higher than 6 foot, he's not a guy that's an aerial threat, to be honest. So I wouldn't be looking at that specifically. The thing is, when you look at kind of strikers that we need to get, the idea of getting in a really young striker makes sense because Aubameyang's here for at least 2 more seasons. So you could get someone to be an understudy to him. But at the same time, I think Arsenal do need someone, if we say qualify for Europe, that is a different dimension to Aubameyang and will give us that. Owen says, Tom in Dutch translate to Todd, which is what Sophie called me last night. Unbelievable.
That was pretty funny.
Unbelievable.
Sorry, buddy.
He says, how do you lot make the time to watch these different leagues? It's my job. That helps. so that kind of helps doing research for leagues. So yeah, that does help. No Sleep says, disagree with you, Todd. This is not sticking. I don't like this. I do not like
this. It's sticking. You're Todd from now on, buddy.
Enrico says, Tom, you seem keen on the Sevilla striker? Yes, I am. Youssef En-Nesyri is my pick. He is who I go for. If you're offering me which striker I think in the bracket of realism that we should go for, I would go for Youssef En-Nesyri. He's someone that has, since moving to Sevilla from Leganés, has really been a consistent performer for them. He's the Moroccan international striker now as well, playing with the likes of Hakim Ziyech and players like that around him too. So he is someone I think can make the step up. He's not like I don't look at him as a fashionable striker. He's a striker that I think if Arsenal signed, you'd get a lot of fans going, "Who the hell is this? Like, why on earth are we going for him?" And would be made to look a little bit silly, I think, which is great when you see that happen. But I think he's one of those that if a team like a Leicester or a West Ham went out and signed, you'd see them perform really well there. And then you'd be looking at them and going, oh, God, why didn't we go for him? So, yeah, I think it costs us a bit of money. You're looking at like 30 to 35 million pounds. But I think he's the type of striker that we should be looking to go for.
I mean, I don't know as much about him as you do, but I've had to write about him a few times, so I've had to do a little bit of research. And I feel like for the profile of player, it makes sense. I mean, you would know more about his situation in terms of would he want to leave Sevilla, who were perennially in Europe on some level, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but are they ever going to win La Liga? Probably not. So, and we can certainly afford a much higher wage packet than most Spanish clubs can. So there's that. But I do like that because it also gives you, what is he, 23? Right?
He's 23, yeah. He's 23.
Yeah, so so I think that gives you, like, say we did ride out Oba for 2 more years. You know, if you brought him in the summer, he would be hopefully trying to get enough minutes to by the time he's 24, 25, and Oba is maybe on the downturn. He's finally coming into his own at the right time, 2 years before his prime begins. So it would make sense. And I think the profile of striker makes sense going after someone who's 23 or 24. I think it's the right move. But again, it has to be someone who unequivocally sees whoever they're currently at Arsenal is like, I can't possibly turn them down kind of thing. So, that's kind of it for me.
Trying to think of anything else before we open up the floor to questions. I don't think there is. So if you this is obviously the last 20 minutes of show, as we like to drop into a Q&A. So if you have any specific questions, doesn't have to be specifically about the striking situation. If it is, great. But if you do have a question for either of us, then please do throw it into the chat box. Yonit Mac, though, just to finish off the section, says, what kind of player are we looking for? A starter, or are we looking for a squad option this summer in that position?
I think for me, it's a squad option. And I think we've hamstrung ourselves by extending Oba.
Yeah.
To a degree, like you extend him and you hope that he can still produce, and that's why you paid him, why you upgraded his pay packet. But again, you don't extend him if he's not going to be a key figure moving forward. And in that case, you're looking at a squad option, I feel like, unless something with Oba changes. For some reason, we don't know how we don't know if he's out of nowhere going to say, I want to leave this summer. We can't, we don't know if that's going to happen. It very well could if we don't get Europe. So who knows? But I think his mere existence in the team literally means you're looking at a player who has to be okay with being a squad option. And a lot of these names people are throwing around, they're not going to be okay with that. So, I think for me, that's kind of where we're at.
So first question, and whilst you're answering this, I need to go plug my laptop in. Patrick Carlson says, will Martinelli play on Thursday?
I don't think he will, which is actually kind of annoying, but I think he'd play the second leg. I think Arteta's going to want to go out in the first against Olympiacos with the best possible 11, really take control of the tie, play a very similar team against Spurs and North London Derby, and then second leg, if we're up by a 2 or 3 goal cushion, then I think you'll see Martinelli play. I don't think he'll start the first leg. I'd be happy if he did, and don't get me wrong, I think maybe he should, but part of us trying to get a run of form going in Europe and connect that to league form is not rotating too much right now. You want to have some continuity in the 11. If your best players are fit and are not in the red zone, you're going to want to play them. So I think he'll play if we smash them 3-0 in the first leg, I think you'll see him in the second leg. I think if we draw or if we're only up maybe a goal or whatever, I don't think he will. I don't know. But I'd love to see him play because I think he brings a lot that we've missed currently, and I'm happy. Obviously, everyone loves how Saka's playing, and I love how Pepe's come on overall and recently. But I think Martinelli does give a little bit of an extra dynamism and will to run at teams, and he does bring that ability to press, in front third. So I'd like to see him, but I personally don't think he will.
Yes, I think that I'm not concerned about his kind of position in the team right now, because I think that he's one of those players that will, I always use Phil Foden as kind of the example. It's being a little bit protected after a long-term injury. He's still exceptionally young, and we've got a lot of players ahead of him in the pecking order right now. So I'm not concerned. If he plays, great. If he doesn't, I'm not too concerned. And I agree with you that we need to be building up consistency with lineups with 1 or 2 players being rotated each game rather than the whole team being changed, because you're never going to build up the consistency that way. Daniel Roberts says, is signing a left back understudy to Tierney more important than signing a right back, as we have Cedric and Chambers if Bellerin goes, of course?
I'm going to let you go first.
I think the right back position is somewhere we need to upgrade in the summer as a priority, along with centre midfield for me. I think that what Bellerin has showed me this season is that I don't feel like we're going to get back to the Bellerin that we had prior to his injury. I don't feel like that Bellerin is going to come about at Arsenal for a number of reasons, both performance related and not necessarily. I don't think attitude's the right word, but I just feel like his time at Arsenal, his story at Arsenal is probably done. Like I don't think he can get any more out of his time at Arsenal than he already is showing. And I feel like it'd be better for him, speaking from like a neutral perspective and taking my Arsenal hat off for a second, speaking from a Bellerin point of view, I genuinely believe that the right move for him would be to go to somewhere else and have a different challenge. And Barcelona could be that. Jean Laporta really likes Bellerin, and of course is now the new president. So that could be a route for him. PSG is another route. Florenzi was only on loan from Roma, and Meunier, they obviously sold to Borussia Dortmund. I'm trying to think of the other. They got a young one, Dagbe, I think, at PSG as well. So I think Bellerin would fit in at PSG or at Barcelona, and he could be better than what he's shown here. I don't think the club should look at his time at Arsenal. I think that he could be one of those players that has a bit of a renaissance if he moves somewhere else. So I think that signing a right back is up there with the priorities of centre midfield. The options that I've thrown out there are, you'll be able to tell me if I'm wrong on this one, but I really like Nordi Mukiele at RB Leipzig. I like Christensen at RB Salzburg. I know that people have tried to say that I want to get a Red Bull sponsor at this podcast, but I just like the clubs. The other one is Emerson, who I said to you in WhatsApp earlier on, who's currently at Real Betis, but he's part owned by, ironically, Barcelona. Barcelona can sign him from Betis for €9 million in the summer, but because they've just signed Sergino Dest and they've got Sergi Roberto, and they could look to bring in Bellerin, I think that, and Sergino Dest can obviously play on either side of the fullback position, so they could effectively move him over to that side, and they could sell Junior Firpo. Ironically, could sell him to us as well as a backup to Tierney, although I have my reservations about that. I know Clive really likes him, but I've got my reservations a bit about Firpo. But I think that Emerson's a really good option. There's one more that has completely escaped my mind, and I can't think who it is. Is there anyone? Tariq Lamptey and Max Aaron's obviously always come up, but they'll be expensive. So, I mean, what names from right back? What do you think about that?
I absolutely love Riddle Baku. I think for me, it would make a lot of sense. But again, you're looking at a situation where Wolfsburg are going to be in Europe next season, barring a collapse.
Babu, did you say?
No, Riddle Baku.
Not Kevin and Babu.
No, Riddle Baku.
Oh, I don't know anything about him, so talk to me.
Well, German international. He's only 21. Came through as a right side midfielder, right winger, but he's transitioned back to a right back and also play right wing back. Very good going forward. Has good delivery from out wide. Good on the ball. Really good pace. But again, you're looking at a situation where, again, Wolfsburg are probably going to get Europe next year. So, and there's no reason why he would want to leave that situation. He's well set to maybe break into getting more considerable minutes for the national team moving forward, especially with Jogi Löw leaving at the end of the Euros. So if depending on who the next German manager is, if it's Stefan Kuntz, who's the current under-21 manager, then
Stefan who?
Stefan Kuntz, not the other one like we talked about in like we talked about WhatsApp. Yeah, I feel like his future for there would be almost guaranteed. So I don't see him moving, but I do like Mbabu as well. I feel like Mr. Zeziger would have appreciated if Arsenal went for him maybe directly from Switzerland. I think he's a very good fullback as well. But again, it depends. He's
a young boys, wasn't he? I think before
he's a young boys. Yeah, that's for Michael. Mike, rather, if he's listening to that, because we all know Mike's joke about young boys. But yeah, there are a couple of names, but I feel like for me, I don't know. Like, and you and I are finally going to disagree on something for the first time in a while. I don't think. If Bellerin leaves, is one thing. If he doesn't leave, I don't want to force upgrading, because I feel like even though he's not the same that he used to be, we still have to remember that even though he's not the same player, he's still the starting right back in the third or fourth best defensive scheme in the Premier League. So is it really that bad having him in 11? Probably not. So especially if you look at maybe who we're talking about bringing in for right-sided center-back long-term, I'd be fine with keeping him and then trying to find the backup to Tierney. But if he does leave, I'm fine with him leaving as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where I'm not fussed either way. If he stays, that's great. If he leaves, okay, just make sure we go and improve correctly. With the Aaron's Lamptey debate, I feel like a lot of people rate Lamptey on very, very little. He played a couple months, did quite well. a right wing back in a Brighton team that counterattacks, not a team like Arsenal that builds from the back where his pace is going to be less of a factor. And he's probably going to be required to, in theory, we think he's going to be required to do underlaps instead of overlaps, and he's been overlapping right-sided wing back. So I think for me, Aarons makes more sense. I think Aarons already plays in the back four at Norwich. He already does a lot of underlapping runs as well. He gets involved in build-up play in the middle third and gets involved in the final third. So I think if you're looking at who makes more sense, I think Aarons makes more sense. But again, Norwich is probably going to get promoted. Do they have to sell? It's the same question that people had with Buendia as well. So I do think whoever it is, if Bellerin does go, and we do try to upgrade on him, I do think that we need someone who can hit the ground running in the Premier League. So I would probably trend towards Aarons if I had to pick. I think and plus it takes care of the homegrown quota as well. So
what about Dumfries?
I like Dumfries.
I'm not a fan.
I like him, but I feel like the thing about analyzing players from the Eredivisie is tricky because I mean,
that's why I'm resistant on
when you're at Ajax and PSV, everything is made so much easier for you when you play in the Netherlands. It really is. And yes, he does perform substantially well when they get into Europe, but I just feel it's a different animal. Going from the Eredivisie where you walk the competition year on year, going to the Premier League, he could easily be exposed, and he doesn't look as good when he plays for the Netherlands. And that's a prime example. They play teams that are better than them or teams that are just as good regularly, and he doesn't look the same player already. So I like him, and I think you'd be looking at a player who might be more of a sideways move to Bellerin rather than an actual upgrade. I do like his physical profile. I like his physical profile, which makes some sense. He's
that's why I like Nketiah.
He's better in the air. Yeah, exactly. So Nketiah, no one's leaving RB Leipzig for Arsenal, period. Like, we can all progress on that.
No, I know. Zamir says Ricardo Pereira too expensive. Now I use Ricardo
you mentioned
Pereira.
this.
Yes. I put Ricardo Pereira in my article about transformative signs that Arsenal could make that were basically signings on the same level as Thomas Partey. Ricardo Pereira will be turning 28 in October. I still think you sign that guy up to like a 3-4 year contract. You're getting the best years from him. He had a really good kind of entrance to the Premier League after joining Leicester from Porto, and I think Leicester. People will go, why would he leave Leicester? But the thing is Leicester have a track record of selling players when they know they can make money off those players, and they've also got cover for them. And when they signed Timothy Castagne from Atalanta, I'm like, right, well, they're sorted at both right and left back because he's so versatile and he can play in either of those two positions. And then they've had James Justin come through whilst Ricardo Pereira was out injured. I know that Justin is now injured, probably got a long-term injury now, but Timothy Castagne will deputise in that role during that period. And I genuinely think that there is scope to maybe tempt Leicester into a sale. It would be pricey, of course it would, but I don't think it's as like it's not one of those players that someone goes, what about him? And you go, we're never getting him, because I genuinely think there's a door that could be open for a player like Ricardo Pereira. So I think that's an option.
No, I mean, not much more to say. I think you're right, actually. So let's say I think it makes. I thought about it more because you mentioned it. I was just like, wah! And then when you think back on that and make the points that you made, I think it does make sense that Castagne is. I think he's quite a good fullback. And,
I would have signed him. I don't know why.
Of course,
Atalanta. Yeah. Should have signed.
And we had that chance when we were in Europe, but that's not happening.
We just do things smart.
So, it would make sense. And I feel like he'd be coming into his prime. And for argument's sake, if Bellerin does go, he'd be the undisputed first choice right back at the club. I think it would make sense for all parties involved. Just not quite sure if he'd be willing to
That's
make
why I think it's a realistic.
So
I think it is realistic when you think about all the things we've just spoken about. That's what makes it. It's not like going. Try to think of a different example now, but you look at other teams across Europe and you're going, they're not going to sell. Like we talked about Mukiele, like he's not going to leave RB Leipzig, and they don't need to sell him. They wouldn't want to sell him. But Leicester have shown in the past with Maguire and with Kante and with Ben Chilwell to Chelsea and stuff like that, that they are open to selling players if they've got the cover available behind them. Interesting to change the conversation slightly. Mr. Joe Kerr says, what is our realistic medium-term goal, lads? Winning more cups, getting into top 4 and competing in the Champions League, or challenging for the league? Punter's chance.
I think realistically, I think we want to get into top 4, and I think Edu said as much. We said by the 2022-23 season, he wants us to be genuinely competing again. And for me, I translate that into top 4 with an outside view of pushing for the league within 2 or 3 seasons. And I think that's a realistic view of where we're currently at the minute and where we could be in terms of the squad moving forward, based off of how players develop and how we're able to reinvest in it. I'd be fine with more cups. I mean, I know a lot of people think the FA Cup has lost its luster, but winning your country's major cup competition is still a considerable achievement. I do think that, well, I know it's a tricky minefield to negotiate, but we still should be pushing on to do things like win Europa League. You know, we are one of the favorites left in the competition at current, and there are some other teams there that can usually win as well. You know, 2 of them being English rivals, but a club of this size should look at Europa League if we're in it as a competition we can win. Champions League, no, but Europa League, yes. So I think we should push for those, and you can still scale out your program to aim to be in top 4 while also competing in these cup competitions. I think that's where we should be at. I don't think pushing to the league. There's no way in a season under normal circumstances we're going to outshoot Man City to the league title. It's not happening. And you know, if Liverpool didn't have the injuries that they dealt with, they'd probably be in much better standing than they are currently. So I think we're so far behind those 2, and then you have a revamped Manchester United. You have Chelsea, who look immeasurably better under Tuchel, such as come in. So I think we're a long way off from competing with those 3. But I think to say we should be looking to get 4th again. I know, you know, the 4th place trophy is back, but you got to start somewhere, right? So I feel like that's what we should be going for personally.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right there. Stephen Power says, doesn't Aubameyang have a clause in his contract that allows him to leave if we don't achieve Champions League? If that is the case, I have absolutely no idea about that whatsoever. It seems like an easy story for someone to make up, but you never know. It could be true. Let's scroll up and see a few more. A lot of people are saying like that they would be competing for the top 4 as their kind of main. I think that's ultimately what Arsenal need to go for. I also think it's next season, or this upcoming summer window, I think that Arsenal need to be looking at players that are going to have an immediate impact in the team. That last summer was the opportunity where we could go out to sign players that were in the like 21 to 23 kind of age bracket that had that investment. We did that in a way, bringing in Gabriel, of course. But I think that this summer, and now looking at how much quality in terms of youth is coming through into the team, and that we've already got with Gabriel on top of that, with Tierney and Martinelli and Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe, and then you've got other youngsters coming through the academy as well. Saliba and Mavropanos coming back also. There is lots of youth that is in this team, and I think now you look at how Everton have been successful by bringing in the likes of Rodriguez and Abdullah Doucouré and Alan, players that have come in and going to have an immediate impact on that team. That we need to look at players that are going to do that for us in this upcoming window. I think that's the way that we need to go to really upgrade on what we've already got, because that's what we haven't done over, besides what I felt was last summer, is look at the market, look at the team and go, look, we need to bring in players that are better than what we already have, which is what we have failed to do consistently over the last decade, if not longer. Anyway, that is going to bring us to the close of today's show. If you could drop a like on the video, we'd really appreciate it. And of course, if you could subscribe to the channel if you're new, we would appreciate that massively too. Make sure you give Drew a follow on Twitter at LogicLero. It is on the screen for you. Thank you, Drew, for your time this afternoon. Much appreciated.
Of course, buddy. Just going to go back to writing now after this. So
enjoy. I'm finished for the day, so I'm sound. Anyway, we will be back tomorrow. I'll be joined by a couple, hopefully, of the members of our expert and our TGT ambassadors to talk about Olympiacos on Thursday. Our preview show is always the day before or 2 days before. And if you'd like to come on the show and join us for these preview shows, then of course sign up as a member, join our Discord server, and we'll see you in there. So much appreciated for joining in today, and we will see you again tomorrow. And as always, up the Arsenal.